Alright guys, we are going to start our second set of notes. So I want you to find this worksheet in your notes packet and get ready to follow along with the notes presentation. Make sure that you get everything filled out because you're going to be using these notes to take a quiz at the end of these notes. So, introduction to genetics. We need to start by going over a few basics. First, what is heredity? Heredity is the study of how traits are passed on from generation to the next. Observable characteristics are the result of genes that come in slightly different molecular forms called alleles. An allele is one of many different forms of a gene. So it's the idea that you have brown eyes and blue eyes and green eyes. It's all the same gene, there's just many different forms. And then we have gametes, and gametes are sex cells, so that's sperm and egg. We can't talk about the history of genetics without talking about the father of genetics, Gregor Mendel. Gregor Mendel is an Augustinian monk from the Czech Republic, and he analyzed and observed the traits of peas growing in his monastery garden. Gregor came up with two main ideas. First, the law of segregation, which states that during meiosis, the genes that control each trait separate, and only one gene from each pair is passed to the offspring. What this means is basically that every gamete, or every sex cell that is created, is just slightly different, but it only passes on half of your parents' genes. Then we have the law of independent assortment, and this is where each gene of a pair tends to assort into gametes independently of other genes on non-homologous chromosomes. So the idea here is that you don't have blue eyes because you have blonde hair. You happen to have blue eyes and blonde hair. It states that two traits aren't necessarily connected, even if you see them more commonly in certain patterns. Now we're going to go over some very basic genetic concepts, and these are key vocabulary words you're going to need in order to successfully complete a majority of this unit. So there are two possible alleles in a gene. You can have a dominant or stronger allele, and a stronger allele is going to be represented by a capital letter, or a recessive weaker allele, which is going to be represented by a lowercase letter. Dominant and recessive alleles can pair up in three different ways. You can have homozygous dominant, so homo means same, so two dominant alleles that are the same, so two capital letters. You can have homozygous recessive, homo means same, recessive means small, so you have two recessive alleles, or two small letters. And then finally, heterozygous. Hetero means different, and so you're going to have one of each type of allele, a capital and a lowercase. We also have two words that describe the difference between what it looks like when it's coded in our chromosomes and what it actually turns out to be once you get that trait. So a genotype is the gene that is coded for a particular trait, and so that's the letters. And then our phenotype is the gene itself, what you see. So AA may code for brown eyes. The letters would be genotype, and brown eyes would be your phenotype. Now that we've gone over the basics, let's talk about a few things that could happen if genetics go wrong. A mutation is a permanent alteration in the DNA sequence of an organism. Some mutations are bad, good, some don't matter, and some we just merely never see. There are different types of mutations, but we're going to talk about two different types. We're going to talk about a point mutation, and this is a mutation only affecting one or very few nucleotides in a gene sequence. It's the idea where your gene mutates at a particular point. Then we have a frame shift mutation, and this is where an extra nucleotide is either inserted into the DNA sequence or a nucleotide is deleted, causing the entire sequence to shift. And these are ones that cause more dramatic issues long term. Alright, that completes our notes. Please make sure to answer the questions within this quiz to the best of your ability because it is part of your grade for this unit.